Hello, brothers and sisters. A little homily for this Sunday on wealth. I'm obviously not at the church anymore, but this homily I was surprised how many positive comments and how much it meant to them. Some said they had never heard a homily on wealth quite like this, and it helped them out quite a bit to understand the church's teaching. So I don't have a beautiful church here for the recording. Not the best looking bookcase either, frankly. But I thought the message was what was important, and I wanted to record that for you here while I had a couple minutes. So on wealth and riches, you want to watch something somewhat funny but serious as well. I would suggest the movie The Ultimate Gift, which came out a couple years ago. The Ultimate Gift is based on a book and Christian inspired, but it's not in their face Christian. But there's a really powerful scene where the billionaire grandfather from Texas has died, and all the kids and grandkids are there for sort of the inheritance moment where the lawyers are kind of reading the papers. And it's kind of sad, frankly, how the kids react. Basically, the grandfather decides not to leave them much of anything for different reasons. They're very spoiled, very expectant, thinking they have a right to everything he has, to inherit everything. And they're literally leaving the room and saying, well, I thought it was a slam dunk, and I'm going to sue and all this stuff. There's just this bitterness. It's almost laughable when you watch it. I encourage it. It's in the beginning of the movie, in the first 5 minutes or so. But in all seriousness, brothers and sisters, it's amazing what attachment to physical wealth can do to us. I ran into a family years ago. Maybe a few of you out there have heard this story before, but I think it's worth repeating. That is, I was walking through the hospital, and a couple comes up to me, a woman comes up to me yelling, "Father, Father," and grabs, just gives me a hug and is crying. Her daughter was having surgery at the hospital, so we went and do a little prayer there for the daughter, recovering. And then she told the story about how back in the country that they were from, they were like the richest and most influential family in that country. They had houses and mansions and boats and cars and helicopters and lots of property. And she said, but as Catholics, we weren't focusing on God at all in our life. And so one fateful Sunday, instead of being at church, they were taking one of their helicopters for a spin and to have a picnic at one of their mountain properties. And in the height of enjoying things, the blade on the helicopter snapped and broke. And this woman, just in a moment of true vulnerability and sincerity, said something I'll never forget. She said, "Father, in that moment, I knew without a shred of a doubt that everything we had, everything that we thought was important, was not important. And that we lacked the one necessary thing, the one necessary person, God himself. Nothing could save us. Money, our friends, our popularity, our influence, none of it. It was useless. It meant nothing in that moment, in that instant. And it would change, right, completely in a split second. The truth of what was going on hit them. And she begged God in that moment, Lord, give us another chance to reprioritize and to do better, to put things in order. Well, the helicopter didn't miraculously stop falling. It actually hit the mountain. But by God's grace, by really, I think, truly an intervention there, Mom and Dad, the kids, and the pilot all walked out of the wreckage. Quite an amazing real-life situation. And so a few years later, the one time I'd ever met them, and I haven't seen them ever since, ran into them, they were on the journey. They were still trying to get the act together, praying sometimes, going to church sometimes, trying to be more generous with the financial wealth that they had, with their influence, better use their time for God. So it's a walk of an act in progress, and I think that's important for us to recognize, because in the grand scheme of things, I always try to sometimes feel called to bring us all back to the big picture. The big picture here, remember, the gospel and the readings we hear on Sunday are a part. They're like a puzzle piece, if you will, or a looking glass into a bigger reality that's part of a whole, right? The gospel is to be considered as part of a whole. So, and that way, understanding the whole, you can sort of see where Jesus' message this day fits in about wealth and riches, possessions. And so think of the whole. What does God reveal? Well, God has revealed this amazing thing that, well, he is a loving father. that wants his children to come home to heaven, wants to be with him forever. He's a forgiving Father who's willing to be patient and wait and receive back the stray, the one that has hurt him, the one that has abandoned him. He's a good Samaritan. He binds up. He comes looking for the sick and the broken, the outcast, the abandoned, you and me, and bring us home, right? To pay the price for our recovery, like the Good Samaritan in the gospel. He's a guy that loves us so much that he'll die on a cross. And then he goes even further after the resurrection to give us his body and blood, soul and divinity in the Holy Eucharist, in every Catholic Mass, and it's in every Catholic tabernacle where you see that red light burning. He's there, and you can visit him and be with him. It's just an amazing gift. You know, gift after gift after gift, right? And last but not least, I'll stress that he's also revealed that, you know, everything that we are, everything that we have is a stewardship. We're just administrators. We don't own anything. Like, nothing you have, from the coat on your back, to your shoes, to your iPhone, to the money in your bank account, right, to your job, your skills, your intelligence, your personality, everything you have is his. You didn't earn it. You didn't get it on your own. There were always other people attached to it, not to mention God who created you with the gifts you have and the time you have, the faith that you have. God gave us everything. And so we should never consider ourselves absolute owners of anything. We're just stewards. And this is an important, life-changing gospel message that if you let it seep in, let it penetrate, it will change your life. So with all that in mind, let's talk briefly about, I'll call them 3 types of people, or 3 phases of the human heart when it comes to, in this case, wealth and possessions and riches, right? Because the readings are a lot about that, about work and making money and saving up wealth and having property and passing property on or not and all that kind of stuff. So it's a real part of human life, and frankly, you know, we handle it all differently. But I think you will find that you're in one of these 3 states, or this describes you in one of these 3, as it does me. And so, again, but always keep in mind the big picture we already talked about, because that's the key, to keep that in relief and behind you, always thinking about that as we zero in on specific instances, right, of where we're at right now in the today of your life. So, for example, the first type of person is the greedy slave. I'll put it kind of drastically. You know, this is the person who's a slave of money and possessions. A little bit like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, if you remember Gollum, you know, about the ring, my precious, my own, it's mine, my precious, right? We can be that way sometimes. It's like St. Paul said, to watch out for greed and to die to it. Well, this person is dead because of greed, frankly. Their heart is stifled, it's closed in on itself. This person oftentimes can think like, well, I don't know anything. I earned this. No one has a right to it. It's mine. I'll do whatever I want with it. How dare you ask me for this? Or how dare they maybe even when it comes to, let's say, seeing someone who's suffering or somewhat poor beggar on the street, you know, not even asking what perhaps is behind that story of that person. You know, this person will just ignore or frankly make, you know, accusations when they don't even know anything about the person. Oh, you know, this person, they're all like that, or they did this, or they deserve what they got. My brothers and sisters, when we talk like that, or let's add in about the inheritance, right, from the gospel. When you start saying, you know, my mom, my dad, my aunt, my uncle, my grandparents, they better give me their money. They better leave me their property. I deserve that. They shouldn't give any of that away or to the church or to anyone else. That's mine. They owe that to me, right? No one has a right to that. I have a right to that. My brother says, when we start thinking and talking like that, we really should give pause to ask, what's going on in me? What's wrong with me? Because that's not how we should be thinking. Certainly not as Christians. I mean, if you're for a pagan, for someone who's never heard the gospel message, for someone who's been taught to be greedy, okay, it's maybe understandable that this could be the case, right? When you maybe meet them, and you know, it's like, okay, that's how they've been taught to be. They haven't heard anything better yet. They haven't been shown any good examples, perhaps. But brothers and sisters, for us as Christians, I think we've heard this message before. And so it's a maturity moment where you need to admit, where I need to admit, where am I being greedy and grasping and holding on like Gollum to the precious? And hey, this can even apply to your vanity and how you want to be regarded always, people not thinking anything bad about you. And you just are just so zealous and so obsessed about that. Or you're holding on to that anxiety, or you're holding on to unforgiveness, like someone I recently heard about who been holding on to a bitter anger and just bitterness towards someone that had slighted them 70 years ago. They're 90 years old or 85 years old, and they can't stop talking about how this person did this to them and this and them and this and them. My brothers and sisters, sure, bad things happen to all of us, but that possession of unforgiveness is killing you, right? And it's holding you back. You got to stop being greedy with that unforgiveness. So it's funny. It's not funny, actually. It's very serious. But it is sort of funny when you think about it to some degree, what we can be possessive about. It's much more than just money. Because remember, money in the big picture, I didn't say this, but remember, money in the big picture is not bad. You can meet people who are very greedy, who are homeless, or very poor and destitute financially. And you can meet people who are greedy, who are financially very wealthy. You can also meet, as I have, some very generous homeless people and people who are financially really down on things and really have, it's really sad, and you really hope that things turn around for them. And we got to be attentive to help people in those situations, right? But they're very generous. As you have probably too, I've met a number of individuals who have, a lot of zeros in the bank and a lot of property, but they live as good stewards of that, and they use it for God and for his kingdom, right? So how much you have is not the issue. The issue is how obsessed, how attached are you? Because God calls us not to be slaves. Now let's go on to the second type of person. Second type of person, the second phase or state of a person's heart towards wealth and riches is the person who is 1 foot in, 1 foot out, we'll call them, 1 foot in the tub, 1 foot out of the tub, so to speak. This reminds me a little bit of St. Augustine. You know this pillar of the church, this great man of God and speaker and student, a great intellectual, man of faith, studied all different types of philosophies and ways of life before becoming Christian, and eventually a bishop of the church. And St. Augustine famously said a number of things like, our Lord, our hearts are restless until they rest in you, highlighting the point we're talking about, right? That we really ultimately can only find rest in the Lord. But he also said famously, Lord, make me chaste. But, kind of parentheses, but, not yet. Not yet. Because he's having lots of sex with different people and having concubines, just enjoying the pleasures of the flesh. And he wasn't committed in marriage to a woman. So this idea that even though you can be moved by God, that you can be attentive to God, you can be virtuous, right? You can be virtuous in different parts of your life. You could have a regular prayer life even. But 1 foot in, 1 foot out. When it comes to generosity with your possessions, the wealth, financially included, you may say like, I'm a good guy, I'm a good woman, I do good. I throw a few little change into the basket, but I need to save up a big pot for later on. We live in tough times. You never know what the future holds. I got to tuck away everything pretty much for the future. Or, this is a good one. I find this a good one. Father, I get it. You all as priests or nuns, maybe, you all need to live this. But we're we lay people, we have to work for it. We need to save up. We need to plan strategically how to use our money and possessions. And at the end of our life, we'll put things in order and try to pass on a little bit here or there to the church and the rest of our kids. My brothers and sisters, this is prime examples of this 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? Because you see, the lens is wrong, right? The lens is wrong. Even though one may be trying and in good faith, be trying to follow God and pray, and go to church and all that, and even give some money to the church and to other good causes out there, right? At the end of the day, the discerning, right? The discerning eye and the what should I do is usually focused just on you. What do you think? What do you want? What would you prefer? It's not, God, what do you want me to do? God, how much money should I keep and how much should I give away? Who should I give it to? And that leads us to the third person. This is the person we're all called to be, right? And we all can be, thanks be to God. And that's the person who's free. The person who's not obsessed with their money and wealth. The person who is free to use it, not just free to use it. Free meaning they are disposed to put it in God's hands as a good administrator and let God dictate how he wants his money and property to be used. And see, that's a big difference. It's a big difference the moment you realize you're kind of like Higgins from good old Magnum P.I., private investigator TV series from the 80s and 90s, right? Tom Selleck. You know, Higgins is the butler overseeing the mansion and all the cars and the Dobermans and this beautiful property, right? And wealth that the master, who you never meet in the show, has put in his charge. And he's faithfully making sure things are done according to what the master wanted. And that's this third person, this third state of living that we are called to live in Christ, like St. Paul talks about, that we are called to put on Christ. Yes, put to death the vices, the slaveries that have choked your heart, the arteries of your heart, spiritually speaking, and let Christ change you. Again, riches, money, all these things are not bad. But what's bad is when they become the center. What's bad is when you become the center of the decision-making. When I become the center. Rather, we need to surrender and ask the Holy Spirit to continue to open us up so we can... Freedom doesn't mean that you don't have, like all of a sudden you've got to just, you know, whether you're a priest or a nun, a lay person, single or married, all of a sudden just get rid of all your money. You know, just give it away, right? God's not asking you to do that. Every one of us has to discern what he wants us to do with our money and possessions, right? Some of us are called to live a life of gospel poverty in a religious life, like I am, where you don't have your own bank account anymore, right? Where you don't, in a sense, make your own decisions on the use of money, right? That you depend on your community, right? So some of us are called to that, but many are not. But we are all called to recognize that everything we have is God's, and to turn to him and ask him, Lord, what do you want me to do with this? And for many of us out there, we probably could be more generous, including not just with our time and our intelligence and influence and such, but also with our money and our properties. And really ask yourself, do you need that new car? You know, as a good friend a while back, he discerned after a while, that really nice sports car, it was nice for a little while, but I don't need it. And he sold it for tens of thousands, and he used the money to help people, right? So there's a lot of those type of things, be it in very large quantities, maybe even millions of dollars, perhaps some of you out there. You could do more and help bring God's kingdom to bear more by helping the church, helping priests, helping missionaries, helping Catholic schools, helping the poor, the suffering, the homeless, etc., right? And other good programs. But whether it's millions or whether it's $5 or $10, and that's literally all that you have that you are able to spare, right? Beyond the necessity you need right now. Well, still, it's the heart that counts. It's the generous heart that the Lord is asking us to have. So this isn't a message about giving more money. I hope you don't take that away. It's a message about listening to the Lord who says, harden not your hearts in the Psalm. And St. Paul, put on Christ. Put on Christ so that at the end of our lives, you may be glorified with him. Like Jesus Christ himself said, it's sad the fool who is called to the Lord and is destitute in the things that matter. But now's our time to put on and receive and live the true life, the things that matter, to be rich in the life of God, which we can be. So may God bless you. I'm praying for you. Pray for me too, please. And count on my prayers. God bless you. And let's invest wisely. Let's invest for the Lord. And I can promise you, one day, if you do that, you will hear him tell you, well done, good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your Lord. Take care. God bless you.